Part 1. The emergency signal reached Earth on a cold Tuesday morning. Ambassador Kelvin Hart was drinking his third cup of coffee when the priority alert flashed across his terminal. He set down the mug and read the message twice, just to be certain he understood what he was seeing. The Galactic Council was asking humanity for military help. In 300 years of contact with alien civilizations, this had never happened before. Humans were the young species, the ones who asked too many questions and took foolish risks. The established empires tolerated them, traded with them, but never truly respected them. Military assistance was something the older species provided to humanity, not the other way around. But now the Crethean swarm had changed everything. Kelvin pulled up the tactical reports and felt his stomach tighten. 40 colony worlds had gone dark in the past 6 months. The swarm moved from system to system, consuming every living thing in its path. No negotiations, no mercy, just endless hunger. The Vryn were next. Their homeworld had less than 72 hours before the swarm arrived. Their military had tried everything. Orbital bombardment barely slowed the creatures down. Ground forces were overrun in hours. Chemical weapons proved useless. The swarm adapted to every strategy, every weapon, every defense. The Vryn were desperate. So was the rest of the galaxy. Kelvin composed his response carefully. The Council wanted soldiers, but they had no idea what they were really asking for. The major powers knew about human military capability in theory. They had seen training exercises and read reports, but they had never witnessed what humans could do when the gloves came off. He typed a single recommendation into his encrypted channel back to Earth Command. Deploy Unit 7. The response came back in less than an hour. Authorization granted. The transport ship would launch within 18 hours. Kelvin leaned back in his chair and wondered if the galaxy was ready for this. Probably not, but ready or not, they were about to find out what humanity kept locked away for the worst emergencies. The UHSV Relentless broke orbit from Luna Base right on schedule. The ship was not large by military standards, but it was fast and heavily armed. More importantly, it carried 12 very specific individuals. Lieutenant Commander Jacob Stone stood on the bridge watching Earth shrink behind them. He was 42 years old with gray starting to show at his temples. His service record was classified at the highest levels, filled with operations that officially never happened. The medals he earned would never be displayed. The enemies he defeated would never be acknowledged. That was fine with him. Recognition was not why he did this work. Behind him in the crew quarters, his team was settling in for the journey. They were reviewing intelligence on the Crethean swarm, studying every failed battle and analyzing the creature's patterns. These were not typical soldiers. Each member of Unit 7 had a story that ended with a choice: prison or service. They had all chosen service. Lisa Grant was checking her explosives inventory for the third time. She was 34 and had been dishonorably discharged from the regular military for excessive use of force during peacekeeping operations. The official report said she destroyed an entire city, blocked to eliminate 12 hostile targets. What the report did not mention was that those 12 targets were about to execute 200 civilians. Lisa made the hard choice, and the military punished her for it, until Unit 7 recruited her. Danny Price was running combat simulations on his datapad. At 29, he was the youngest member of the team. He had spent 2 years in military prison for disobeying a direct order. His commanding officer had ordered a retreat that would have left a dozen wounded soldiers behind enemy lines. Danny ignored the order, went back for them, and saved 11 lives. The one who did not make it was his best friend. The military court-martial said he violated the chain of command. Unit 7 said he was exactly what they needed. Kate Morrison was reviewing biological data in the medical bay. She was 37 and held 3 different doctorates in biology, genetics, and combat medicine. Her crime was developing unauthorized chemical weapons during a classified research project. She argued the weapons were defensive in nature. The review board disagreed and sentenced her to 15 years in a research prison. Unit 7 offered her a better option: use her skills to save lives instead of wasting away in a cell. Andrew Cole was cleaning his rifle with practiced precision. He was 45 and had more combat experience than the rest of the team combined. His court-martial was for actions taken during a Black Ops mission that went wrong. When enemy forces captured 3 of his teammates, Andrew went after them alone. He got them out, but the methods he used were deemed violations of the conventions of warfare. Unit 7 did not care about conventions. They cared about results. The rest of the team had similar stories. Each had crossed a line that the military could not officially tolerate. Each had made decisions that saved lives but broke rules. Each had skills that were too valuable to waste in a prison cell. So Unit 7 existed in the shadows. They were the option nobody wanted to use, but everyone was glad existed. They were sent to situations where normal rules did not apply, where the mission was more important than appearances, where winning was the only thing that mattered. Jacob gathered the team in the briefing room 6 hours into the flight. The holographic display showed the Vryn homeworld and the approaching swarm. "We have 3 days to prepare," he said quietly. "The Vryn have given us access to all their tactical data. Every battle they fought, every strategy they tried, every weapon they deployed. All of it failed. Why did it fail?" Lisa asked. Kate pulled up a biological analysis. "The swarm is not mindless. It learns and adapts rapidly. Chemical weapons that worked on one hive cluster do not work on the next. Defensive positions that held for hours during one battle collapse in minutes during the next engagement. They are evolving faster than any species can counter. So we cannot use conventional tactics," Danny said. "No," Jacob agreed. "We cannot. Which is exactly why we are here. The Vryn fight with honor and follow established military doctrine. The swarm does not care about honor. It only understands survival and consumption." Andrew looked up from his rifle. "So we fight dirty." "We fight to win," Jacob corrected. "Whatever that takes." The team spent the rest of the journey preparing. They studied the swarm's biology, looking for weaknesses that others had missed. They analyzed failed defensive strategies and designed new offensive approaches. They prepared equipment that no conventional military would approve. When the Relentless dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 days later, the Vryn homeworld of Thessic Prime filled the view screen. Half the planet was dark. The swarm had already begun its work. Jacob activated the communication channel to the surface. "Unit 7 to Vryn Command. We are ready to deploy." The response came from Commander Zixthar, the Vryn military leader. His translator carried tones of desperation and confusion. "You are sending 12 soldiers? Against millions of swarm creatures?" "Yes," Jacob replied simply. "This is madness. You will all die within hours." Jacob smiled without humor. "Maybe, but we will make those hours count." Ambassador Kelvin Hart, who had traveled with them, added his own message. "Commander, I understand your skepticism, but I suggest you watch carefully. You asked for help. Humanity is providing our answer." The transport shuttle launched toward the planet's surface. Inside, Unit 7 made their final preparations. They checked weapons, reviewed objectives, and mentally prepared for what was coming. Lisa Grant looked around at her teammates. "Anyone else think this is completely insane?" "Absolutely," Danny agreed. "That is why we are perfect for it." Kate was monitoring biological readings from the swarm-infested regions below. "The concentration of creatures is highest in the southern agricultural zones. That is where the hive clusters are forming." "Then that is where we go," Jacob said. "Straight into the worst of it." Andrew chambered around in his rifle. "Just like old times." The shuttle descended through the atmosphere. Below them, the Vryn military had established a defensive perimeter around their capital city. It was holding for now, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the swarm overwhelmed it. Unit 7 was not going to the defensive lines. They were going behind enemy lines straight into swarm territory. As the shuttle approached the landing zone, Jacob gave his final orders. "Remember, we are not here to hold ground. We are here to hurt them, confuse them, and make them fear us. We are going to teach the swarm something it has never learned before." "What is that?" Danny asked. Jacob's expression was cold and determined. "That humans are more dangerous than they are." The shuttle touched down in the ruins of a Vryn city. The doors opened to reveal a landscape of nightmare. Swarm creatures covered every surface, moving in perfect coordination like a living flood. Unit 7 stepped out into the chaos. The galaxy's most dangerous humans had arrived. The swarm creatures were everywhere. They moved across the ruined buildings like water flowing downhill, thousands of bodies working together with impossible coordination. Each creature was roughly the size of a large dog, covered in black chitinous armor with mandibles that could cut through steel. Their compound eyes reflected no light. giving them an appearance of being formed from living shadow. Jacob watched them from the shuttle's loading ramp for exactly 3 seconds. That was all the time he needed to confirm what the reports had told him. The swarm was not attacking randomly. They were harvesting. Every organic material in sight was being systematically collected and consumed. Lisa, Danny, set up the first surprise package. Jacob ordered. Kate, I need biological readings from as many creatures as possible. Andrew elevated position with Overwatch. The team moved with practiced efficiency. There was no hesitation, no discussion. Each person knew their role and executed it immediately. Lisa and Danny moved toward what had once been an agricultural processing facility. The building was half collapsed but still had structural integrity where it mattered. More importantly, it had an irrigation system that covered 12 square blocks. Lisa was already pulling chemical containers from her equipment pack, while Danny set up the detonators. Kate moved in the opposite direction with a strange weapon that looked nothing like a gun. It was a dart launcher loaded with tracking devices disguised as swarm pheromones. She fired 6 shots in quick succession, each dart embedding itself in a different creature. The swarm did not react. As far as they could tell, she was marking some of their own for priority harvesting. Andrew found a position on top of a partially standing tower. From here he could see the entire operational area. His rifle was not a standard military weapon. It fired specialized ammunition, designed to cause maximum disruption rather than simple destruction. Each bullet contained a capsule of chemical markers that would confuse the swarm's coordination signals. All positions ready. Andrew reported through the team's encrypted channel. Jacob checked his tactical display. The Vryn military command was watching their every move through satellite feeds. He could imagine their confusion. 12 humans spreading out in different directions instead of forming a defensive position. It made no sense by conventional military standards, that was the point. Execute Phase 1, Jacob commanded. Lisa triggered the first charge. The explosion was not particularly large. It destroyed one section of the processing facility and killed maybe 100 swarm creatures. The Vryn watching probably thought it was a wasted explosive. Then the irrigation system activated. Water flooded through the channels that had once carried nutrients to crops. But this was not water anymore. Lisa had spent the shuttle ride down mixing a compound that Kate had designed specifically for the swarm's biology. It reacted with the chemical markers in their exoskeletons, causing a cascade failure in their coordination pheromones. Thousands of swarm creatures suddenly lost contact with the hive mind. They began moving erratically, bumping into each other, attacking anything that came close. The perfect coordination dissolved into chaos. Phase 1 successful, Lisa reported. Approximately 4,000 creatures affected. Phase 2, Jacob said. Danny triggered his charges in sequence. These were not designed to kill. They were designed to spread Kate's biological markers across the largest possible area. Each explosion sent a cloud of microscopic particles into the air. The swarm creatures breathed them in, absorbed them through their exoskeletons, carried them back to their hive clusters. The markers were ingenious. They mimicked the swarm's own pheromones, but with one crucial difference. They told the creatures that everything around them was food, including each other. Within minutes, the swarm began to cannibalize itself. Commander Zixthar watched the tactical feeds in stunned silence. The human team had been on the ground for less than 20 minutes, and already thousands of swarm creatures were dead or neutralized. But the method was unlike anything he had ever seen. They are not fighting them, his tactical officer observed. They are turning the swarm against itself. This is not honorable combat, another officer protested. Zixthar did not respond. Honor meant nothing if your species was extinct. The humans were achieving results that the entire Vryn military had failed to accomplish in weeks of fighting. On the ground, Unit 7 was already moving to the next objective. The first engagement had been a test, a way to learn how the swarm would respond to unconventional tactics. Now they had data. Now they could really hurt it. Jacob led the team deeper into swarm territory. The creatures were still present in massive numbers, but the chaos caused by the chemical attacks had disrupted their coordination. Instead of a unified force, they were now operating in confused clusters. Kate, analysis? Jacob asked as they moved through the ruins. The pheromone disruption is working better than projected, she replied, studying her data pad while walking. The swarm is trying to adapt, but our markers are based on their own biology. They cannot distinguish between real coordination signals and our false ones. How long until they figure it out? At their adaptation rate? Maybe 12 hours, but we can modify the markers to stay ahead of them. Do it. Lisa, Danny, I need the next target prepared in 6 hours. Already scouting locations, Lisa replied. She was studying a map of the region, looking for infrastructure they could exploit. The Vryn had built their cities with efficiency in mind. Power networks, water systems, transportation tunnels, all of it could be weaponized if you knew what you were doing. And Lisa definitely knew what she was doing. Andrew provided covering fire as the team moved through dangerous territory. His specialized ammunition was proving effective. Each shot disrupted multiple creatures, creating gaps in the swarm's coverage that the team could exploit. But he was counting his shots carefully. They had limited supplies and no way to resupply until the shuttle returned. Contact North Corridor, Andrew warned. Larger variant, possibly a controller organism. The team took cover behind a collapsed wall. Jacob risked a look and saw what Andrew had identified. It was bigger than the regular swarm creatures, perhaps the size of a small car. Its exoskeleton had different coloration, and its mandibles were larger and more complex. Kate, thoughts? If that is a controller, it is coordinating the local swarm clusters. Eliminating it would disrupt thousands of creatures. Or it would alert the hive that we are a priority threat, Jacob countered. We are not ready for that level of attention yet. He made a decision. Andrew, tracking shot only. Mark it, but do not engage. We will come back for it when we are ready. Andrew fired once. The dart struck the creature and embedded itself deep in the armor plates. The controller did not seem to notice. It continued directing swarm movements in the area, unaware that it was now broadcasting its location to Unit 7's tactical network. The team moved on, leaving the controller alive for now. They had bigger objectives to accomplish first. 6 hours later, they had set up their next operation in the remains of a Vryn power distribution center. The facility had been abandoned when the swarm arrived, but the power grid was still partially functional. Lisa had spent 3 hours rigging the entire system with explosives and chemical dispersal units. This is going to be loud, she said with satisfaction. Very, very loud. Danny finished placing the last detonator. The power surge should reach 14 substations across the region. If Kate's calculations are correct, the electromagnetic pulse will disorient the swarm for at least 30 minutes. It will work, Kate assured them. She was setting up biological sensors around the perimeter. The swarm uses electromagnetic fields for part of their coordination. A pulse this large will blind them temporarily. And when they recover? Andrew asked from his overwatch position. They will be angry, Jacob said. Which is exactly what we want. An angry enemy makes mistakes. He activated his communication link to the Vryn command. Unit 7 to Vryn command. Recommend you prepare for a major operation. We are about to get the swarm's full attention. Sixthar responded immediately. What are you planning? Something that will either save your world or get us all killed. Possibly both. That is not reassuring. It is not meant to be, Jacob replied. Just be ready to support us if this works. We are going to need extraction soon. He closed the channel and looked at his team. They were tired, dirty, and running on minimal sleep. But every one of them was focused and ready. Last chance to back out, Jacob said. It was a ritual he performed before every major operation. He always gave his people the choice. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They just checked their weapons and waited for the order. Jacob smiled grimly. All right then. Lisa lighted up. Lisa triggered the sequence. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the entire power grid exploded in a cascade of electrical fury. Lightning arced between substations. Transformers exploded. The electromagnetic pulse washed across the region like an invisible wave, and 14,000 swarm creatures stopped moving all at once. The silence was eerie. After hours of constant chittering and movement, the sudden stillness felt wrong. The swarm was not dead, just temporarily disconnected from their coordination network. Phase 3, execute now, Jacob ordered. The team split into predetermined directions. They had 30. The Vryn command center was in chaos. Officers were shouting reports over each other, while tactical displays showed something that should have been impossible. The Krethian swarm had stopped advancing. For 18 hours, the creatures had held their positions without moving forward even a single meter. Commander Zixthar stared at the displays in disbelief. In all recorded history, the swarm never stopped. It consumed and moved forward, always forward. Retreat was unknown. Hesitation was impossible. Yet now, across a front line that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, the swarm sat still. What did they do? His tactical officer whispered. How did 12 humans accomplish this? Ambassador Kelvin Hart stood in the corner of the command center watching everything unfold. He had seen human military operations before, but never anything like Unit 7. They did not fight like conventional soldiers. They fought like something else entirely. They showed the swarm something it never encountered before, Kelvin said quietly. Uncertainty. Aboard the UHSV Relentless, Unit 7 was preparing for the next phase. They had barely slept in 36 hours, but nobody complained. Sleep was a luxury for peacetime. This was war, even if the enemy did not realize it yet. Jacob gathered his team in the briefing room. Kate had spent the night analyzing the biological samples she collected from the swarm. Now she had new information that changed everything. The swarm is not mindless, Kate explained, displaying her findings on the holographic screen. They have a distributed intelligence network. Each creature contributes to the whole, but there are specific organisms that serve as coordination nodes. The controllers we identified are part of this network, but they are not the source. So where is the source? Lisa asked. Somewhere in their home territory. A central organism or collection of organisms that process information and direct the swarm's overall strategy. We hurt them badly enough that they are being more careful now. They are waiting for new instructions or analysis from the central intelligence. Danny leaned forward, so they can actually think and plan. They are not just consuming everything by instinct. Correct. Which means they can learn from mistakes. Our tactics worked because we surprised them. But they will adapt quickly. The next engagement will be much harder. Jacob nodded slowly. Then we do not give them time to adapt. We hit them again before they figure out how to counter us. That is aggressive, Andrew noted. The Vryn military needs time to reposition and reinforce. If we push too hard and fail, there is no backup. If we wait, the swarm finishes its analysis and adapts, Jacob countered. Then all our advantages disappear. We have a window of opportunity and we need to use it. He pulled up tactical maps of the swarm-controlled territory. Kate identified 3 major hive clusters in the agricultural zones. These are where the swarm is processing biological material and growing their numbers. Destroy these clusters and we cut their expansion capability. How do we destroy structures that large? Danny asked. We do not have enough explosives even if we used everything on the ship, Kate smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We do not need to destroy them from outside. We make them destroy themselves, she explained her plan. The swarm's biological processes were incredibly efficient, but that efficiency was also a vulnerability. The creatures consumed organic matter and processed it through specialized organs within the hive structures. If they introduced the right pathogen into this system, the entire hive would become toxic to the swarm itself. The virus I am designing will alter how they process nutrients, Kate continued. Instead of nourishment, the processed material will produce compounds that are lethal to the swarm. They will essentially poison themselves through their own biological functions. How do we introduce this virus? Lisa asked. We need to get it directly into a hive's processing center. That means going inside. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. The hive structures were filled with swarm creatures. Security would be intense. Getting in would be dangerous. Getting out might be impossible. I will go, Jacob said immediately. This is too risky to order someone else to do. You will need backup, Andrew said. I am coming with you. Me too, Kate added. I need to ensure the virus is introduced correctly. If we do it wrong, it will not work. Jacob looked at his team. The rest of you will provide support and extraction. If we do not make it out, you continue the mission without us. Nobody liked that order, but everyone nodded. They all knew the stakes. One team was acceptable losses if it saved a planet. The mission launched 6 hours later. Jacob, Andrew, and Kate took a small stealth pod coated with swarm pheromones. The disguise would not hold up under close inspection, but it might get them close enough to the hive structure. Lisa and Danny positioned themselves with heavy weapons at extraction points. If the team made it out, they would need covering fire. If they did not make it out, Lisa and Danny would make sure the swarm paid for it. The stealth pod descended toward the largest hive cluster identified in the agricultural zone. The structure was massive, easily the size of several city blocks. It pulsed with organic movement, covered in swarm creatures that crawled across its surface like ants on a hill. "Approach vector locked," Andrew said from the pilot seat, taking us in slow. "If they detect us, we will not have time to react." The pod moved through clouds of flying swarm variants that circled the hive like living satellites. Kate monitored their pheromone emissions, making sure the pod's disguise matched what the creatures expected to encounter. "So far they are ignoring us," she reported. "The pheromone coating is working." They landed on a section of the hive that appeared less active. The outer shell was made of hardened biological material, somewhere between bone and chitin. Andrew found what looked like an entrance, a circular opening where swarm creatures were constantly entering and exiting. "That is our way in," Jacob said. "Stay close and move with confidence. Hesitation will mark us as foreign." They exited the pod and joined the flow of creatures entering the hive. The pheromone coating on their suits should make them smell like part of the swarm, should being the critical word. Inside the hive was worse than any of them imagined. The walls were living tissue that pulsed rhythmically. The air was thick with the smell of organic decay and chemical processes. Swarm creatures moved through corridors in organized lines, carrying biological material toward the central processing areas. Jacob, Andrew, and Kate moved with them, trying to match their pace and behavior. Any sudden movement or wrong direction could alert the entire hive. Kate was navigating using biological sensors that detected the chemical signatures of the processing centers. 200 meters ahead and down 3 levels. "That is where we need to go." They descended through the hive structure using passages that seemed to have been grown rather than built. The walls were warm to the touch and occasionally moved as if breathing. Several times they had to press themselves against the walls as large controller organisms passed by, directing traffic through the hive. "This place is a nightmare," Andrew muttered through the team's encrypted channel. "Focus on the mission," Jacob replied, though he agreed completely. They reached the processing center after 20 minutes of careful movement. It was a vast chamber where thousands of swarm creatures were depositing organic material into pools of digestive enzymes. The material was broken down and then absorbed by the hive structure itself, feeding the growth of new chambers and creatures. Kate pulled out the viral payload. It was contained in a small canister that looked disturbingly like a swarm egg. "I need to introduce this directly into the main processing pool. The one in the center is the largest. If we contaminate that one, the virus will spread through the entire hive's circulatory system." "How close do you need to get?" Jacob asked. "Close enough to throw it in, maybe 10 meters. They moved along the chamber's edge, staying in the shadows where swarm activity was less intense. The creatures were focused on their work, depositing material and moving on to collect more. None of them paid attention to 3 figures that smelled like they belonged. Kate positioned herself at the optimal throwing point. The central pool was 8 meters away, well within range. She prepared the canister, arming the release mechanism. "On my mark," Jacob said. "Kate throws, then we run. No hesitation, no stopping." "Ready," Kate confirmed. "Mark." Kate threw the canister in a perfect arc. It landed in the center of the pool and sank beneath the surface. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the pool began to bubble violently. The swarm creatures nearest the pool stopped working and turned toward it. Their coordination patterns shifted as chemical alarms spread through the hive. Something was wrong. Something was foreign. "Move now," Jacob ordered. They ran. The disguise was broken, and every creature in the hive knew there was an intruder. Swarm creatures poured from side passages, responding to the chemical alarm. The corridors became a nightmare of chittering bodies and snapping mandibles. Andrew led the way, his rifle firing the specialized ammunition that disrupted the creatures' coordination. Each shot bought them a few more seconds, a few more meters of distance. Kate was monitoring her tablet even while running. "The virus is active and spreading. The hive's biological systems are already beginning to fail. How long until total breakdown?" The Vryn homeworld was celebrating. Their capital city was filled with crowds cheering the impossible victory. The Krethian swarm had retreated, leaving Thessic Prime damaged but alive. It was being called the Miracle of Thessic, though everyone knew it was not a miracle. It was 12 humans doing what no one else could do. Commander Zixthar wanted to hold a formal ceremony to honor Unit 7. Jacob declined politely but firmly. They were not here for medals or recognition. More importantly, the mission was not finished. "The swarm retreated, but it is not destroyed," Jacob said during the debriefing with Vryn Command. "It pulled back to regroup and adapt. If we give it time, it will return stronger than before. What are you suggesting? Zixthar asked. We follow them. We track the swarm back to its home territory and finish this permanently. The room went silent. The idea was insane even by human standards. The swarm had emerged from a region of space that no species had explored in thousands of years. The area was marked on every galactic chart as the exclusion zone. Ships that entered did not return. Signals sent into that darkness never came back. That would be suicide, a Vryn tactical officer protested. The exclusion zone is forbidden for good reason. Your entire planet was going to be consumed 3 days ago, Jacob replied flatly. Now you are worried about old superstitions? Ambassador Kelvin Hart stepped in before the argument could escalate. What Commander Stone is proposing is extremely dangerous and would require authorization from the Galactic Council. Such a mission cannot be undertaken lightly. Then we will not ask for authorization, Jacob said. We will do what needs to be done and deal with the consequences later. Kelvin pulled Jacob aside after the meeting. You realize this could create a diplomatic nightmare. If you enter the exclusion zone without council approval, there will be serious repercussions. I understand. But if we wait for the council to debate and argue, the swarm will have time to rebuild. They are wounded right now. This is our best chance to end the threat permanently. And if you fail? If Unit 7 is lost in the exclusion zone? Jacob met his eyes. Then make sure someone else finishes the job. The swarm cannot be allowed to survive. The UHSV Relentless departed Thessic Prime 6 hours later, without authorization or support. The Galactic Council would not even learn about the mission until it was already underway. By then, it would be too late to stop them. The journey into the exclusion zone took 8 days. 8 days of traveling through space that felt fundamentally wrong. Sensors showed readings that made no sense. Stars appeared and disappeared without explanation. Several times the navigation systems insisted they were moving backward, even though the ship was clearly going forward. This region is not natural, Kate said, studying the bizarre readings. Something has altered the fundamental properties of space here. I cannot determine if it is technology or biology or something else entirely. Lisa was less concerned with the scientific explanation. As long as we can find the swarm and blow it up, I do not care what is causing this weirdness. Danny was reviewing tactical data, trying to predict what they would find. We destroyed 3 major hive clusters on Thessic Prime. The swarm would need a massive base to rebuild from losses like that. Something big enough to hold millions of creatures and process biological material from 40 consumed worlds. We will find it, Jacob said with certainty, and when we do, we make sure it never threatens anyone again. On the 9th day, they found it. The structure appeared on long-range sensors as a massive organic construct roughly the size of Earth's moon. It was not a planet or a station. It was something grown, built from the accumulated biological matter of 1,000 worlds. The entire surface pulsed with life, covered in swarm creatures beyond counting. That is their home, Andrew said quietly, staring at the display. That is where the swarm comes from. Kate was running every biological scanner the ship had. The readings are incredible. The structure is not just housing the swarm. It is the swarm, one massive interconnected organism made from millions of individual creatures. I am detecting at least 24 queen organisms, each one the size of a city building. Can we destroy it? Jacob asked. Not with conventional weapons. Even if we used every missile and explosive on this ship, we would barely scratch the surface. That thing has the mass of a moon. Destroying it would require fleet-level firepower. Then we do not destroy it from outside, Jacob said. We use the same approach that worked on Thessic Prime. We make it destroy itself. Kate had been working on an improved version of the hive-killing virus during the journey. This one was far more aggressive, designed specifically to target the central coordination organisms. If they could introduce it to the queen organisms, it would spread through the entire structure's biological network. But getting to the queens would require infiltration on a scale they had never attempted before. The structure was massive. Security would be overwhelming. Even with the best pheromone disguise, the chances of getting deep enough to reach a queen were almost zero. This mission will require a volunteer team, Jacob announced. 3 people to enter the structure, reach a queen chamber, and deliver the viral payload. The odds of survival are extremely low. He looked around at his team. I will be leading the infiltration. I need 2 volunteers. Every hand went up immediately. Jacob felt something tighten in his chest. These people had followed him through impossible missions for years. They trusted him completely, even when that trust meant walking into certain death. Andrew, you have the most combat experience for fighting in confined spaces. Kate, we need your biological expertise to ensure proper delivery. You are with me. The rest of the team would remain on the Relentless, providing support and monitoring the mission. If the infiltration team did not make it back, Lisa would be in command. Her orders were simple: complete the mission by any means necessary. They prepared for 3 hours. The stealth pod was coated with the most sophisticated pheromone disguise Kate could create. The viral payload was triple-checked and secured in containers that looked like swarm eggs. Each team member carried enough weapons to fight their way through hundreds of creatures if necessary. One more thing, Jacob said before they launched. He recorded a message and encrypted it with commands to send to Galactic Council after 24 hours. If we do not return, this message will explain what we did and why. It will probably start several diplomatic incidents. Probably? Danny asked with a slight smile. Definitely, Jacob corrected. The stealth pod launched toward the massive structure. As they approached, the scale became truly overwhelming. The surface was not solid. It was constantly moving, writhing with biological activity. Swarm creatures moved in patterns that covered entire continents of the structure's surface. I am detecting organized hive clusters across the entire surface, Kate reported. The queens are deep inside, probably near the core where they are most protected. Then, that is where we go, Jacob said. They found an entry point in what appeared to be a transport passage where massive creatures were carrying biological material into the structure's interior. The pod landed near the passage and the team exited, immediately coating themselves in additional pheromone layers. Inside was worse than the hive structures on Thessic Prime. Everything was larger, more developed, more alive. The passages were wide enough to drive vehicles through. The creatures moving through them were enormous, some the size of buses. They walked for 2 hours through passages that seemed to go on forever. The structure was so vast that traveling even a few kilometers toward the center took incredible time. They had to hide several times when controller organisms passed, each one directing thousands of creatures in complex organizational patterns. Kate was tracking chemical signatures, following the traces that indicated queen organism locations. We are getting closer. Another kilometer and we should reach a chamber large enough to house a queen. The chamber they eventually found was beyond anything they imagined. It was a cavern the size of a sports stadium, and at its center sat a creature that defied description. The queen was easily 50 meters long, a massive organism that pulsed with life. It was surrounded by thousands of worker creatures that tended to it constantly, feeding it, cleaning it, carrying away the eggs it produced at a terrifying rate. That thing is producing hundreds of eggs per hour, Andrew whispered. No wonder they can replace losses so quickly. We need to get the viral payload into its feeding system, Kate said. See those tubes connected to its body? That is how it receives nutrients. If we can introduce the virus there, it will infect the queen and spread through the entire structure's biological network. The problem was getting close enough. The queen was surrounded by security creatures, larger and more aggressive than normal swarm variants. They moved in constant patrols, checking everything that approached. We cannot just walk up there, Jacob said. The disguise will not hold under that level of scrutiny. Then we create a distraction, Andrew suggested. Draw their attention elsewhere while one of us delivers the payload. Jacob considered the options. They had limited explosives, enough to create chaos, but not enough to cause serious damage. But chaos might be all they needed, all right. Andrew and I will create noise on the far side of the chamber. Kate. The structure was screaming, not with sound, but with chemical signals that pulsed through every passage and chamber. The queen's distress was being transmitted to millions of creatures simultaneously, and all of them were responding. Jacob, Kate, and Andrew ran through passages that were suddenly filled with swarm creatures moving in the opposite direction. They pushed against the flow, trying to reach the exit point before the entire structure went into complete lockdown. The virus is spreading faster than predicted, Kate reported while running. The queen's biological systems are failing catastrophically. The signal is propagating through the entire network. How long until total collapse? Jacob asked, shooting a creature that tried to block their path. Unknown. Could be hours or minutes. This structure is more complex than anything I have studied before. They reached a junction where 3 passages met. Andrew checked his navigation device and pointed left. Exit is 2 kilometers that way. The passage was packed with creatures. There was no way through without fighting, and they did not have ammunition for a sustained battle. Jacob made a quick decision. Explosives. Clear the passage. Andrew pulled one of their remaining charges and set it for maximum dispersal. He threw it down the corridor and the team took cover. The explosion was not large, but the chemical payload scattered across hundreds of creatures. They began attacking each other in confusion, clearing a path through the chaos. The team sprinted through the gap before it could close. Behind them, more creatures were arriving every second. The entire structure was mobilizing to defend the dying queen. They ran for 10 minutes straight, fighting past scattered groups of creatures, always moving toward the exit. Kate was monitoring biological readings on her datapad, watching in fascination as the virus spread through the structure's network. "It is working beyond my projections," she said. "The virus has reached at least 6 other queen organisms. They are all showing signs of systemic failure. Can the structure survive if all the queens die?" Jacob asked, unknown. "But I doubt it. The queens are the central processing nodes for the entire organism. Without them, the coordination network will collapse completely." They burst out of the exit passage onto the structure's surface. The stealth pod was exactly where they left it, and more importantly, it was still intact. They scrambled aboard and Andrew launched immediately. The pod climbed away from the surface at maximum acceleration. Through the viewports, they could see the structure beginning to change. The constant writhing movement was becoming erratic, uncoordinated. Massive sections were starting to collapse inward. "UHSV Relentless, this is the infiltration team," Jacob transmitted. "Mission successful. Request immediate pickup." Lisa's voice came back instantly. "About time. We have been watching sensor readings go crazy. That thing is dying. Fast approach. We may have company." The Relentless moved in quickly, matching velocity with the pod. The docking procedure took 90 seconds, which felt like an eternity, with the structure collapsing behind them. Once aboard, Jacob went straight to the bridge. Danny was at the sensor station, tracking the structure's breakdown in real time. "All 24 queen organisms are dead or dying," Danny reported. "The biological network is experiencing cascading failures across the entire structure. It is consuming itself from within." "Time to get clear," Lisa said from the command chair. "How far is safe?" "There is no data on what happens when something this large dies," Kate said. "But I recommend at least 10,000 kilometers." The Relentless moved away at full speed while the crew watched the structure's death. It was not a quick process. The massive organism took hours to fully collapse, its biological systems shutting down in waves. Swarm creatures by the millions died as the coordination network failed. The queen's bodies ruptured and poisoned everything around them. By the time it was over, the structure that had housed the Creathian swarm for thousands of years was dead. It hung in space as a lifeless husk, a monument to a threat that had finally been eliminated. Jacob stood on the bridge watching the destroyed structure drift in the darkness. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just exhaustion and the knowledge that they had done what was necessary. "We should send a message to the Galactic Council," Kelvin Hart said. He had stayed aboard the Relentless during the mission, monitoring everything from a safe distance. "They need to know what happened here." "They will know soon enough," Jacob replied. "Right now I want to make sure we did not miss anything." "Danny, full sensor sweep. Confirm that there are no surviving hive structures or queen organisms." Danny ran comprehensive scans for 2 hours. When he finished, his report was conclusive. No signs of organized swarm activity. Individual creatures are still alive in scattered pockets, but without the coordination network, they are just animals. "The threat is eliminated." "Not quite," Kate said. She had been analyzing the viral spread through the structure. "We need to make sure the swarm knows why this happened. We need to send a message that any future attempt to threaten the galaxy will have the same result." Jacob understood what she meant. Destroying the swarm's home was necessary but not sufficient. They needed to establish deterrence. Make it clear that humanity would respond to any future aggression with overwhelming force. He composed a message and broadcast it on all frequencies in every known language and several theoretical ones based on the swarm's communication patterns. "This is Unit 7 of the Human Defense Forces. The Crethean swarm has been eliminated for threatening species under galactic protection. To any surviving swarm elements, remain in your territories or face complete destruction. Humanity protects its allies. Humanity does not forgive threats. This is your only warning. He ended the broadcast and turned to his team. Set course for Galactic Council space. Time to face the consequences. The journey back took 3 weeks. During that time, news of what Unit 7 had accomplished spread through the galaxy. The Vryn celebrated. Other species whose worlds had been threatened by the swarm sent messages of gratitude. But the Galactic Council was less pleased. Ambassador Kelvin Hart received daily messages demanding explanations for the unauthorized military operation. The Council wanted to know how humanity could unilaterally decide to launch an attack into the exclusion zone. They wanted to know what gave Unit 7 the authority to destroy the swarm without consulting anyone. Kelvin had simple answers to these questions. But he knew they would not satisfy the Council. Humanity had acted because no one else would. Unit 7 had done what was necessary because waiting for permission meant accepting more deaths. When the Relentless finally docked at Zenith Prime Station, Jacob was immediately summoned to appear before the full Galactic Council. He went alone, leaving his team aboard the ship. The council chamber was massive, designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of species. Jacob stood in the center while alien dignitaries looked down at him from elevated seats. The council chair, an ancient being of pure energy named Luminex, spoke first. Commander Stone, you stand before this council to answer for actions that violated numerous galactic laws and treaties. You entered the exclusion zone without authorization. You conducted military operations without consulting this body. You used biological weapons that are banned under the conventions of civilized warfare. Jacob listened without expression. When Luminex finished, he replied calmly, "Everything you said is true. We broke your laws. We violated your conventions. And because we did, the Crethean swarm is no longer a threat to anyone." "That is not the point," a delegate from the Sithari Empire protested. "You cannot simply ignore established rules because you believe the ends justify the means." "Can I not?" Jacob replied. "Your rules and conventions were written for civilized warfare between honorable opponents. The swarm was neither civilized nor honorable. It consumed 40 worlds while you debated proper procedures and proportional responses. We would have found a solution eventually," another delegate insisted. "Eventually?" Jacob's voice remained calm but gained an edge. "How many more worlds would have died while you debated? How many billions of lives would have been lost waiting for your solution?" Luminex attempted to restore order as the chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates agreed with Jacob. Others condemned him. The debate went on for hours. Finally, Kelvin Hart requested permission to speak. As Earth's ambassador, he had the authority to address the Council on behalf of humanity. "Members of the Galactic Council, I understand your concerns about Unit 7's actions, but consider what they have accomplished. A threat that consumed 40 worlds in 6 months has been completely eliminated. The Vryn homeworld was saved. Dozens of other colonies that were in the swarm's path are now safe. At what cost to our principles?" a delegate demanded. "At the cost of being willing to do what is necessary when principles are not enough," Kelvin replied. "The swarm did not care about your principles. It only understood consumption and expansion. Unit 7 understood this and acted accordingly." "Your Unit 7 fights without honor," another delegate said. "They use tactics that violate every standard of civilized warfare." "Yes," Kelvin agreed. "Because civilized warfare was failing. You asked humanity for help specifically because your civilized approaches were not working." The debate continued for 2 more days. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the Crethean swarm. Unit 7 had returned to their classified base on Earth, a facility that officially did not exist in any military database. They trained, they prepared, and they waited. The waiting was always the hardest part. Jacob stood in the observation deck watching a training exercise below. Danny and Lisa were running urban combat scenarios with holographic enemies. Their coordination was perfect, each anticipating the other's movements without needing communication. Years of working together had created a bond that went deeper than friendship. They were a single fighting unit that happened to occupy 2 bodies. "You think they will call us again?" Kate asked, joining him at the window. She carried a data pad filled with research on potential biological threats. Even during downtime, she was always working. "Eventually," Jacob replied. The galaxy has more threats than just the swarm. We eliminated one problem, but there are always others waiting. The Council fears us now. Some of them want Unit 7 disbanded completely. Let them want. As long as we get results, they will keep using us. Fear is not enough to overcome necessity. Kate was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that had been bothering her for months. Do you ever wonder if we went too far? If we became the monsters we were fighting? Jacob considered this carefully. It was a question he asked himself often during sleepless nights. We did what was necessary to protect billions of lives. The methods were harsh, but the alternative was genocide on a galactic scale. I can live with that choice, but can the galaxy live with us? Kate pressed. We showed them what humans are capable of when we remove all restraints. Some species will never trust us again. Trust is earned through actions over time. We saved the Vryn. We eliminated a threat that consumed 40 worlds. Those actions speak louder than fear. Andrew entered the observation deck carrying maintenance equipment. Just finished servicing the shuttle. Everything is ready if we get called up suddenly. Always prepared, Jacob said with approval. That is what keeps us alive. That and Lisa's complete disregard for safety protocols, Andrew replied with a slight smile. Did you see her latest proposal for breaching charges? The yield alone would violate 6 different treaties. 7, actually, Kate corrected. She showed me the specifications. Technically brilliant, completely illegal, and absolutely necessary if we ever face armored targets in confined spaces. This was life in Unit 7. They operated in the space between legal and necessary, between acceptable and effective. Other military units followed rules and protocols. Unit 7 followed results. The alert came 3 days later. Jacob was reviewing intelligence reports when his terminal flashed with a priority message. The encryption was maximum level, which meant either Galactic Council or Earth Command. He opened it and read the contents twice. Then he activated the team alert. Everyone to briefing room immediately. We have a situation. The team assembled within 5 minutes. Nobody asked questions. They just sat down and waited for Jacob to explain. We received a request from the Meridian colonies, Jacob began, pulling up a star map. 3 mining stations have gone completely dark in the past 2 weeks. No distress signals, no communications, just silence. When scout ships investigated, they found the stations intact but completely empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of what happened to the 15,000 people who were working there. Evacuation? Danny suggested. All ships were still docked. No evidence anyone left voluntarily. The Colonial Authority thinks it is a new threat. They want Unit 7 to investigate. Lisa leaned forward, studying the map. This does not fit any known threat profile. Pirates would take valuables and leave bodies. Plague would leave bodies. Even the swarm left evidence of attack. This is something else, which is exactly why they want us, Jacob agreed. We handle the unknown threats, the ones conventional forces cannot understand or counter. Kate was already analyzing the limited data available. The stations all had similar functions. Asteroid mining and processing. They were located in remote sectors with minimal traffic. Whatever took the people left the infrastructure completely intact. So they wanted people specifically, not resources or technology, Andrew observed. That narrows the possibilities. Slave traders? Danny asked. Galactic law enforcement would handle that, Jacob replied. This request came through official channels with council backing, which means they believe it is something more serious. He pulled up their deployment orders. We leave in 6 hours. The Relentless will take us to the Meridian sector. Our mission is to determine what happened and eliminate the threat if possible. And if it is not possible? Lisa asked. Then we gather intelligence and report back. But let us hope it does not come to that. The team spent the next hours preparing equipment and reviewing everything known about the missing stations. The data was frustratingly limited. The Colonial Authority had secured the stations after the disappearances, but their investigation found nothing useful. No biological traces, no unusual radiation, no signs of forced entry or exit. People had simply vanished. The UHSV Relentless departed Earth on schedule. The journey to the Meridian sector would take 12 days, giving the team time to prepare for every possibility they could imagine. Kate set up a mobile laboratory to analyze any biological evidence they might find. Lisa prepared breaching equipment and weapons for multiple scenarios. Danny reviewed station schematics and planned entry strategies. Andrew maintained their equipment and ran combat drills. Jacob spent most of the journey in the ship's intelligence center, reading every report about the disappearances and similar historical incidents. There were few precedents. Some ancient records mentioned entire colonies going silent with no explanation, but those were thousands of years old and lacked detailed documentation. On the 8th day of travel, they received an update from the Colonial Authority. A fourth station had gone dark. This one had a population of 8,000. The pattern is accelerating, Kate observed. 2 weeks between the first 3 stations, only 6 days before the fourth. Whatever is doing this is getting more efficient or more aggressive. Or there are more of them, Lisa added darkly. They arrived in the Meridian sector on day 12. The Colonial Authority had a security fleet maintaining a perimeter around the affected stations. The fleet commander was not happy to see Unit 7. "You are the solution the Council sends?" Commander Phillips said over the communication channel. 12 people to investigate a threat that has taken 23,000 colonists? "We have handled worse," Jacob replied simply. "Which station had the most recent disappearance?" "Mining Station 7. It went dark 4 days ago." "We have not sent anyone inside yet. Orders were to wait for you." "Smart. We will investigate and report our findings. Maintain your perimeter and be ready to evacuate if we transmit an emergency signal." "Evacuate? From what?" "Unknown. That is what we are here to determine." The team took a shuttle to Mining Station 7. The station was a typical orbital facility, designed to process minerals from nearby asteroids. It should have been bustling with activity. Instead, it hung silent and dark in space. "Life support is active," Andrew reported from the pilot seat. "Atmosphere reads normal, but I am not detecting any movement inside." "Anything on thermal?" Jacob asked. "Negative. If anyone is alive in there, they are hiding extremely well." They docked at the main airlock. The team suited up in full combat gear, weapons ready, sensors active. Kate carried additional biological scanning equipment. Lisa had enough explosives to destroy half the station if necessary. The airlock cycled without problems. The interior lights were on, but the corridors were empty and eerily quiet. No bodies, no blood, no signs of any struggle. "This is strange," Danny muttered. "Even if people were taken by surprise, there should be some evidence of panic or resistance." They moved through the station methodically, checking every room and corridor. The crew quarters were neat and organized. Personal belongings were still in place. Meals were left half-finished in the cafeteria. Workstations showed active projects that had been interrupted mid-task. "It is like everyone just stopped what they were doing and walked away," Lisa observed. "But there is nowhere to walk away to. We are in space." Kate was running biological scans constantly. "I am not detecting any unusual pathogens or toxins. Air quality is normal. No signs of chemical weapons or biological agents." They reached the station's control center. The main computer was still running, but the logs showed something disturbing. All personnel had logged out of their stations at exactly the same moment 3 days ago. Then nothing. "Synchronized to the second," Andrew said, examining the timestamps. 8,000 people all stopping work at the exact same instant. That is not natural behavior. Jacob felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was not a physical attack. Whatever took these people had done it without violence, without resistance. That implied a level of control or influence that was deeply disturbing. "Kate, could this be some kind of mind control or psychic manipulation?" "Theoretically possible, but I would need to detect residual neural activity or unusual electromagnetic patterns." "Let me check." She pulled out specialized scanning equipment and began sweeping the control center. After several minutes,